Okay, yes, I know covering entire combiner teams in a single video is something I've always regretted doing, but I have a good feeling about this one, or at least a less bad feeling. These are the Puzzlers, 6 GoBots that combine to make, well, Puzzler. Which is fine as a naming convention, I guess, but imagine if the Combaticons combined to make Combaticon, or the Protectobots made Protectobots, and so on. There's just not a lot of spice to the naming convention. But the heck with team names, let's talk about individual names, and by extension, get this video actually rolling. As I said, this is a 6-bot team. Here we have Rube in black, Zig Zag in blue, Crossword in orange, and Pocket in yellow. Jig Saw, no, not like that, is in black and white, and Tic Tac is this kind of reddish orange. I may not be a fan of how the team names and combiner names relate to each other, but as someone who's loved making dad jokes since I was single digits old, I legitimately love how they leaned into silly for the individual figure names. A bunch of robots that combine to make a big robot named Puzzler, well, then of course you give everyone on the team puzzle-like names. Pocket and Zig Zag don't fit quite as well. Like, could they not have used king, checkers, rook, domino, or something? But then again, maybe there's a connection I'm just not noticing. As a team, though, this is an interesting set. It's all cars, and they're all roughly the same size, though not quite when it comes to Rube and Zig Zag. Well, I'll get to Rube and Zig Zag. But there's no leader that towers over everyone else like you usually see with Transformers combiner teams, even the G1 figures. And because these are 80s toys, the alt modes all look fantastic. Pocket, Crossword, and Tic Tac, they are all personal favorites, but the whole team looks nice and cohesive without a ton of seams or obvious transformation joints in the vehicle modes, though there are some. Also, there's Zig Zag's light band, which just no. But aside from that, I'd go as far as to call the alt modes darn near perfect. Even the color separation and detailing is spot on. All the windows are done up in either black or gray. All of the rims on all of the vehicles are chromed. Trim around the bottoms of most of the cars. Not all, but most, like Pocket, Zigzag. This is Zigzag. Pocket, Zigzag, and Jig Saw, they all have black trim around the base. Some of them have chromed headlights. Jig Saw has translucent orange plastic in place of headlights and taillights. There's just a nice set of cars. By modern standards, they're not particularly large. Maybe a little bigger than a core class, but definitely smaller than a deluxe. So again, these are older toys, so while they're not huge, they're comparably really heavy thanks to all the die-cast metal parts, which they all have in some capacity. Now, before we move on to the individual robot modes, I've got a coffee, I've got a Patreon, links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description if you want to support the channel. Otherwise, typical YouTube stuff like comment, share, subscribe, that kind of thing, that also helps out. Now, let us begin, and we will start. We'll start from the outside and work our way in. So let's start with Pocket and Crossword because they have the same transformations. Pocket. Well, again, same transformation. So basically what you want to do is you pull this out. It is on a slider. So you pull this out, but you also want to split this apart. And you can kind of see how these bits kind of tuck in around these metal pieces, and that keeps this from sliding back down. Unfortunately, this can easily get pushed back in, which then causes it to slide down, but hey, it's something. Then I'm going to slide out what will become the arms. Slide out. And again, this is a toy that's just about as old as I am, so, its joints aren't the strongest, which the same. Same for me. And finally, now that we've got the arms and the legs sorted, just flip this panel around. And there we have Pocket in robot mode. And sit back here. Crossword, same deal. Just pull that out. Split the legs so that the little metal bits end up getting kind of held in place by these little pivots. Separate or slide out the arms, which is a little little tricky, but doable. So slide out the arms and then rotate the head up and into place. And there is Crossword. And now let's move on to Rube and Zig Zag. And again, same exact transformation between these two. So I'm going to take the front of the car on Zig Zag and flip it up. It just accordions out like this. Pull these bits out and they will kind of slide outward and separate a little bit to create legs. Now, there is one difference between Zig Zag and Rube in that with Zig Zag, you want to make sure you pull the arms out before you do the rest of the lower body. So you pull the arms out. Again, they're just on sliders, just like with Crossword and Pocket. So with the arms pulled out, now you can rotate this around. And the reason you want to do the arms first is because these fists sit down by the hips, which is actually below where the rotation is. And I just find it's best to not, risk things clashing or stressing by keeping the arms in place. And you use the little slider here to slide Zig Zag's head up. And there is, let's get these two out of the way. There is Zig Zag. And Rube, again, same exact transformation. You just flip those up, slide the legs out. But now here you can see that the fists do not sit below the waist. So if you wanted to, you could rotate that around before you do the arms. That's like the one key difference between them, but it's kind of like the transformation equivalent of semantics. Anyway, just slide out the arms and then slide up the head. And there is Rube and Jig Saw. As you can see, the joints are friction based and there's metal in them. So, these being older toys, Zig Zag doesn't really hold up when you pick him up. But like when he's as a car, it's fine because gravity just keeps everything in place. But anyway, for Zig Zag, what you want to do first is actually take care of the arms because you need to get them out of the way in order to move the legs, because there's this little lip here that if you try to move the legs, it kind of scrapes. I guess you can do it, but it like scrapes past those arms, which I don't really like doing, but we'll do it for now. So you straighten that out and then collapse it back in slightly. Other leg, same deal. You just kind of pull out, rotate it down, straighten it out, and then push it back in. And there is, this is practically it for Zig Zag's robot mode, but the arms do something kind of cool. So you slide them out, as you would expect, but you notice they're way down here. So what you actually have to do is slide them up and then rotate them around. That's actually kind of cool. I like that transformation step. We'll talk about his robot mode in a little bit, but there's Zig Zag. And finally, Tic Tac. Tic Tac's transformation is also kind of interesting. So you want to slide this back section around, flip these bits around as well, and they don't really slide back into place. What they end up doing is they kind of snap-ish into place here, and that keeps them from sliding back down. Now, what I find is easiest to do is you actually want to bend this piece forward, because that's how you're going to be able to take the arms, to slide the arms out. But you want to get these little flaps in the center here pulled up, bend this forward, and then pull out the arms. Because otherwise, these bits kind of sit inside this piece, so sliding them out would just not be as good. And then this can just kind of go back in place. And there is Tic Tac. And there we have the Puzzlers. Now, despite the simplicity, because transforming toy engineering was like that in the 80s, I do like how the Puzzlers transform. And a couple of these do actually have some legitimately interesting engineering in terms of 40-plus-year-old toys. I particularly like, as I pointed out during the transformation, how Jig Saw's arms pull out and then slide up and rotate to completely reorient the trim of the car mode. And I also like how simply but effectively the lower body portions of Rube and Zig Zag come together. Now, looking at the entire team in robot mode, I think they still look good together. They don't look good in a traditional sense, like with aesthetics, but they fit. They're cohesive. They're all roughly the same height, too. I'm angrily staring at Rube and Zig Zag as I say this. Obviously, the robot modes are visually compromised, but I can give pretty much everyone except Jig Saw a pass because of the time period that these were designed and manufactured in. Rube and Zig Zag are probably the best looking overall, despite the gigantic feet. And I like how they both have slightly different torso shapes and stickers to help them stand apart from one another a bit more, rather than simply using the different plastic colors and car mode tooling. Crossword and Pocket are probably the most go-body looking pair of the team in my eyes because they're literally just cars that are standing up. I don't dislike this, I actually find it kind of endearing, but let's be real. That's exactly what's going on here. It's just standing up cars. But again, it doesn't bother me because 1, 80s, 2, GoBots, 3, they do at least look different from each other, and 4, they all have to do the combiner thing. Jig Saw is my least favorite looking, not because of the super lanky arms or always there head, or because of the it might be a cop car alt mode, but it could also be a pace car. It's not entirely clear. But it's because his robot mode is just so boring. The feet are just the back of the car. The arms are just flat planks. And the body looks like the kind of generic sci-fi robo-shaping you'd see on something that was on one of those closeout store battery-operated toys. You know, the ones that awkwardly walk a couple of inches and then spin around 360 degrees at the torso. And all they did to try and liven this slab up is put a bit of directionless red and yellow in the middle. It doesn't work. Tic Tac, though, Tic Tac is weird. Like Jig Saw, the feet are just the back of the car and the rest of the body is just the underside of the car. And the elbows are stuck at this 90-degree angle, and the midsection is, well, I mean, just look at it. Plus, the face is framed by screws and a coat hanger. And yet, I think I like Tic Tac's robot mode the best. I mean, it's not good, but it's the most interesting. And as blah as the arms are, along with everything else from the waist down, the chest shape and detailing is kind of cool, and I really dig the head relief sculpture. Okay, that's not very fair because all the puzzlers take the same approach to head construction. I just like the obvious visor plus the slightly smiling mouth. It just looks good on Tic Tac. Jig Saw's face is the same kind of battery-operated generic robo design as the body, so yawn. Rube and Zig Zag are fine, though I do like how they mixed it up and used yellow for Rube's detailing. I like the eyes and that little head crest. Crossword's face looks kind of weird, but I think I'm okay with it because it also reminds me of Leader 1 a little bit, just without the aviators. So it's the one that says GoBots to me the loudest. And Pocket is Sunstreaker. Just straight up Sunstreaker. I feel like everyone who knows about this set has made this observation before, but like, what other comparisons can we make? Look at this thing. It's Sunstreaker. As for articulation, it's pretty much what you'd expect from the 80s across the board, with a couple of small exceptions. Everyone has shoulder rotations, and a few can pull off some very slight inward and outward motion due to the way the arm sliders are set up. Crossword and Pocket can technically look down because of the transformations, just tilt the little panel down, but it doesn't look great. They do also have waist swivels, though, because of the combination transformation. Rube and Zig Zag can't do anything with their legs, but they do have waist swivels, too. Tic Tac also technically has bicep swivels, I guess? And Jig Saw, surprisingly, has the most leg articulation out of the bunch. It's got some outward motion, and even what could count as either forward and backward motion at the hip or possibly knee, or a knee down here. It approximates knees anyway. Size-wise, they're about as mushy as the vehicle modes in that they're too small to stand with a modern deluxe, but too tall to work with a core class. I guess I'd call it average GoBot scale? I don't know, but for what they are, I think they're a decent size. Also, they have to combine, so making them any bigger would have probably caused way more issues than the Gestalt already has. Spoilers for what's coming, I guess. Now, for the combination. I think I'm going to start with let's go with stock configuration. It's not entirely clear which side Zig Zag and Rube go on. I've seen some pictures with Zig Zag on the left and Rube on the right, and then others with Rube on the left and Zig Zag on the right. I don't know. This is the orientation I'm going to do them in, though. So we are going to start with Rube and Zig Zag, and their transformations are basically you're just going back into vehicle mode, but leaving the feet out. And I do plan to address this in later. It's in the script. I'll get to it. But yeah, this is, I believe, the stock configuration to have Zig Zag and Rube just like this. Crossword and Pocket, same deal, except they're kind of the inverse of each other. I'm going to squeeze the legs back together, fold the head back in, compress the arms back in. But now what you're gonna do is use that waist swivel. That isn't really a waist swivel. And then bend this down. You can see there's actually a cut in the die cast here where that windshield can fit through. So bend that down and then flip out what is a combined mode fist. And that is Crossword, Pocket, same deal. Just gonna shove the arms back in, rotate the head back around, push the legs back together. This time, just for the heck of it, I'm gonna flip the fist out ahead of time. So there we've got the fist. Move this piece up and out of the way, rotate, bring this down, and there is Pockets all taken care of. For Jig Saw, I do something a little bit different, and I'm not going to take the thing apart to do like the, compare and contrast fan mode thing. But basically, all I do is rotate the arms back, then bring the legs all the way out and bend them all the way forward. And that is all that we do with Jig Saw. And since we're doing this, let's bring Zig Zag and Rube in here. And the way this works is their heads just kind of slide into these little gaps here. And thankfully, it's well designed in that the faces don't actually stick out past this frame. So you don't have to worry about paint scratching. That's actually pretty clever design. But there is Rube, and there is Zig Zag, and this is where the height differences between them becomes very annoying, but I'll get more into this later because, again, it's in the script. But yeah, there is Jig Saw with Zig Zag and Rube, and then finally for Tic Tac, we're going to put Tic Tac back into vehicle mode. So we want to slide, you want to bend this forward again so you can slide these pieces in and they'll be able to tuck in there. And the arms can kind of bend, and you don't have to push them in all the way though, but those bend in, the legs flip around and then slide up. And now, what you want to do for Tic Tac is you want to fold out the little coat hanger piece. This just folds forward. Bring out the arms, bring all of this around, and he's basically just going to go into the fetal position. So you bend him all the way around, and you want to get this coat hanger piece over and around these exhaust pipes. And it just hooks over the exhaust pipes like that. And when you do that, you may notice that his fists kind of line up with these little slots on the side here. You want to peg the fists into, or hands, whatever you want to call them, you want to peg those into the, why aren't you, there we go. You want to peg those into the sides there, and that gives you a torso. So then all we have to do is bring Jig Saw, Rube, and Zig Zag back in. Tic Tac will then plug into the bar on top of Jig Saw. The way that works is there are these little bits on top here. Those plug into little holes in the exhaust pipes, and it just plugs in like that. And then for the arms, this is actually pretty clever. When Tic Tac is all closed up solidly, what actually ends up happening is it creates a little hole that's just the right shape for this little peg to peg into on both Crossword and Pocket. So this slides in, and it actually kind of clicks, it kind of doesn't, it just really depends, but it slides in and holds in place to give him arms. And there we have the puzzlers completely combined into their Gestalt Robot Mode. Now, everyone, may I introduce the Puzzler? Maybe 3 people will get that reference, but I salute all of you. You are folks with refined taste. This ridiculous thing is why I really wanted to track down this set. I am obsessed with how the combiner comes together and how cohesive it looks for what it is. Look at him. He's just a little guy made of cars. That's great. This is a combining robot toy released in the 80s, I think 1985, at least in the US, that offers 6 vehicle modes, 6 robot modes, and a Gestalt with 0 parts forming and absolutely no extraneous bits. It's an Ocular Max style all-in-one combiner that came out almost 40 years ago. Just think about that for a minute. And when you think about it, the individual figures don't really suffer all that much for the sake of the combination either. I mean, they do, but when you consider when they were released, the set is kind of a marvel of engineering. Rube Zig Zag, though. Zig Zag's leg mode is ever so slightly shorter than Rube's. So I either end up having to shift Jigsaw's legs to compensate, and hence why they're off-center and like they're not lined up quite right, and I have to hope they stay that way, or live with a puzzler that always wants to lean to whatever side Zig Zag's on. This is an issue that did not need to exist, and yet here we are, and I hate it. And like I said before, I'm also not entirely sure what the correct orientation is for Rube and Zig Zag. Some of the official packaging shows Rube on the left, Zig Zag on the right. Like, it's just... Some of the images also show the torsos spun around like they were for robot mode, but for the leg mode. But most of the photos show them like this, where they're just car feet. But the animation stills I found show them with the rotated torsos, so maybe that's the right way to do it. I do like how that mixes up the aesthetic a bit, but I also kind of prefer how the oops all car look fits with the rest of Puzzler's design. It's confusing and kind of irritating, but I guess I could just do whatever I want because it's a toy. I just wish I knew for sure what the intended arrangement was supposed to be. Anyway, look at this guy. Proportions in this mode are shockingly decent as long as you ignore the shelf pelvis when he's in profile. Like, Jigsaw sticks out a lot. It's also kind of cool how all of the individual bots are so clearly color separated throughout the body. Almost like a Megazord in terms of the color placement. You even do get a little bit of articulation in this mode, which rivals some Transformers combiners from the day. And again, this is all built in. The head is fixed, but you can rotate the arms around on detented joints. They're actually detented. Outward motion is also there, but it's way too loose to be useful unless you're able to break gravity. Crossword and Pocket's waist swivels do sort of work as bicep rotation now, and you can kind of fudge a little bit of an elbow on both of them, but it doesn't like to stay in that position. It's more just, again, based on gravity. That said, and somewhat surprisingly, Jigsaw does actually allow for a bit of a waist swivel, which is honestly pretty cool. And the leg joints let you kind of angle them to sort of approximate outward thigh swivels. You don't really have anything else in the legs, though, unless you want to use Rube's thigh swivel, or waist swivel, rather. And I'd be just Rube's, because the way Zig Zag comes together, his arms are tucked inside the legs. So you're not going to rotate Zig Zag when he's collapsed like that. It's just not going to happen. I guess you could, but you're almost guaranteed to break it if you're actually able to rotate it. As for Puzzler's head, it's what I'd consider another standard go-body design. It's fine. I like that it's a proper head rather than just a plank, and it's a bit bigger than the individual bots, so it fits the combined mode a little bit better. And the blue accents look good on the silver. It does look a little too friendly in my mind, though, which is kind of a problem because the team, and by extension, the combined mode, they're all renegades. Yet you probably wouldn't know it, but Puzzler's a bad guy GoBot. A bad guy bot, if you will, but you probably shouldn't. On the one hand, it doesn't seem fitting, but on the other hand, I do like how GoBots tends to ignore the idea of making baddies look like baddies. Except Crasher. Crasher always looks like a baddie. Sorry, couldn't resist. That wasn't in the script, I just had to put that in there. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a cool and refreshing approach that was done in the 80s. GoBots are all just GoBots. Whether they're good or bad comes down to their personalities and doesn't really have anything to do with how they look, or at least their personalities aren't necessarily reflected in their aesthetics or color choices. There's no inherently good color scheme or evil aesthetic here, and I respect that. Still think Puzzler maybe could have at least gotten a scowl or something, though. When it comes to size, well, I don't have any classic combiners for comparison, but I feel like Puzzler is roughly around that height. Absolutely taller than a modern Deluxe and Voyager, but just about on par with a modern Leader. He's also roughly in line with Beast-era combiners like Tripredacus, and he matches up with RID Combiner Force Menasor pretty well, and probably weighs 5 times as much. So yeah, not a bad size overall. And that's Puzzler. A very mixed set with some extremely interesting design choices and 1 or 2 annoying ones that amount to a neat, if compromised, combiner, a team of some of the go-bottiest GoBots that ever go-botted, and half a dozen cars that do a great job of representing the cars they're supposed to be. There's a lot here that I'm willing to overlook due to the age of the set and the time period it was released in, but at the same time, there are a lot of elements to it that really impress me precisely because of how old it is and when it came out. Very weird, very rough, very cool. But that's all I've got to say about GoBots Puzzler. What do you all think of this set? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll be seeing you in whatever the next video ends up being.